Okay, so this question is about an article that recently came out in Outside Magazine. Did you see the Outside Magazine article against individualized training? So this is referring to an article in Outside Magazine that was a little bit clickbaity. I thought the title of the article was "The Case Against Personalized Workout Plans." So yeah, it's a little bit clickbait. I guess, yes, I did see the article. Yes, I read it. I'm curious if you read it or if you're asking the question kind of just based purely on the title of the article, because it didn't, in my opinion, it didn't quite make the point that it was claiming to. For background, there is kind of an accepted understanding that some people tend to be responders versus non-responders, as well as a spectrum in between. And when I say that, I mean responders in terms of how they respond to training stimulus. Some people really seem to improve rapidly with virtually any stimulus, and some people who really hammer away at very tailored plans and just kind of don't make improvement in the same way. And some people respond better to different types of stimulus. And so this article kind of reviewed some studies that were meant to understand the differences or what is causing those differences, and the personalization of training was really like the point in question. So in the review of the studies, their conclusion was, quote, "The existence of meaningful individual trainability for VO2 max response is unlikely." So what they reviewed was a series of studies specifically related to VO2 max training and individuality within VO2 max trainings. However, as every athlete and coach knows, VO2 max is only one narrow piece of a training puzzle. So even if we accept their conclusion, that individualized VO2 max training doesn't cause any meaningful difference in training outcome, that doesn't exactly rule out the need for individualization across any other training intensities or modality or protocol or anything. So, for example, endurance, threshold, anaerobic capacity, sprinting, all of these things, this didn't address any of those at all. This is to say nothing of the fact that even with the same plan, there is going to be variation in how a coach prescribes the same plan or how an athlete interprets it. There's individuality, excuse me, in terms of how coaches motivate, how they pull back, etc. For example, I'm just thinking theoretically, this is not something I've done, but if I were given a cookie cutter plan to prescribe to two different athletes, if I know those two different athletes, I could still give them the same plan, but the way that I prescribe it in terms of the guidance that I provide is going to look very different, because if I have an understanding of how an athlete responds to training, I'm going to change how even the same plan is prescribed. So I just don't buy the premise ultimately, even for the fact that this is only in reference to VO2 max training and really neglects all the other training intensities, which are obviously quite important. So I see this as a data point asking the question in terms of individualized VO2 max training. But, I also look at my 15 years of coaching experience and, almost 20 years of athlete experience, and I'm just not buying it. I think it would take a significant more amount of work to actually dig into these studies, because this was a review of multiple studies. So we're also just accepting the premise that all of these studies were very well designed and that the conclusions that were reached from these studies are worth accepting. So that is one premise that we just simply accept. So I'm not buying it. I think it's a bit clickbaity. I think it's one very narrow aspect. So I'm not sure that it makes the claim that it proves the point that it is claiming to, ultimately, is my opinion upon reading the article.